Hey all, Ron here from Military Images Magazine with a new episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail. Today's story begins with an email I received last month from subscriber James Edwards. In it, James described a document dated December 3rd, 1862, which documents household property taken from a resident of Sharpsburg, Maryland, by the Union Army less than 2 months earlier at the Battle of Antietam. James came into possession of the document about 30 years ago. It was gifted to him by a friend who knew that he was interested in the Civil War. The friend has since passed, and to the knowledge of James and his wife Phyllis, the friend was not related in any way to the resident of Sharpsburg who wrote this document. James also noted, I'd like to donate the document to the right person or organization. Maybe you could create a story around it showing the effects of war at Antietam on the citizens of that area for your YouTube channel. Would you be interested in it, or would you know of someone who would be? Well, the email exchange continued, and I learned that James had made an effort some years ago to find a home for the document at Antietam. Though the visitor center happened to be closed the day he visited for remodeling, James met a helpful employee in the parking lot who gave him a name. James called 3 times and left messages, never received a reply. James added, I would really like to turn this over to you, and you do what's best for its preservation. So I made a promise to James and Phyllis that I'd be honored to be the caretaker of this document, to research it, to create a video telling the story behind the document, and then to find the best place for its preservation. So the document arrived in this tube right here, and I carefully took it out. I've got it right here. I'm very careful and I don't want to do any damage to it, but you can see it's rolled and it's quite long. It's actually 3 sheets of paper that are taped together or pasted together in some way. And so it seems quite fragile. So I don't want to open it up here, but I did want to share it with you all so you could get a sense of what it actually looks like, the physical size of it. It's in, I think, remarkably good condition. The penmanship is quite bold and still it's easily readable. I'll get this back in the tube later on. So I unrolled it and I laid it out on a table, very careful with it, kept the light down low, and I began to read. I'd never seen anything quite like this in all of my years of researching, let alone an original document. I got goosebumps when I read it for the first time. So there's real history from the Battle of Antietam right in my hands. The document is divided into 2 distinct sections. The first section is a list of losses suffered by a Sharpsburg citizen during the battle. The list has been notarized by the Washington County, Maryland Justice of the Peace and witnessed by 3 local men. The second section is an oath of allegiance to the United States. So let me read it to you. And I'll start with the first part. This is the part that you're seeing here. It begins, the United States do to Samuel Kramer for damages done at the Battle of Antietam on the 16th and 17th September 1862 by the Army of the Potomac. And then we go on to get a list. Tall panels, fence railing at $1 per panel, $11. 5 plank fence, $5. 6-foot worm fence, $3. Half an acre corn, 15 bushels at 75 cents, $11.25 total. Destruction of garden vegetables, $10. Kitchen furniture, $15. 2 barrels of flour at $7 per barrel, $14 total. Men's clothing, bed clothing, $36. 11 pair of pants at $2 each, $22 total. 12 shirts at 75 cents each, $9 total. 3 pair of men's drawers $1.50. Four pair of boots at $3 a pair, it's $12. Four pair of shoes, $8. 15 gallons apple butter at 50 cents, $7.50. Preserves and jellies, $10. 5 bushels potatoes, $5. 3 pounds lard at 10 cents, $3. Bush onions, $2. Total, $5. 30 chickens at 15 cents, $4.50. 10 pair yarn socks at 37 cents a pair, $3.75. Grand total, $196.50. The section continues, and you can see the rest of it here. State of Maryland, Washington County, to wit, I hereby certify that on this 26th day of November, 1862, before me, the subscriber, a justice of the peace of the state of Maryland in and or Washington County, personally appeared Jacob Benner, Andrew Snyder, Hiram Seiss, three good and loyal men, citizens of the United States, and attached to the government of the same, being duly sworn on the holy evangely of Almighty God, to value and appraise the damages done by the Army of the Potomac on the 16th and 17th September 1862 at the Battle of Antietam, have ascertained the damages and do value and appraise said damages according to the foregoing list of items and account as above stated. Subscribed before, on the day, the year above written, Jacob Good, Justice of the Peace, Jacob Benner, Andrew Snyder, Hiram Seiss, who happens to be Kramer's son in law. Now, here's the second section of the document. You can check it out here. It goes on. I, Samuel Kramer, a citizen of the state of Maryland, do solemnly swear that I have not voluntarily borne arms against the United States since I have been a citizen thereof, that I have voluntarily given no aid, countenance, counsel, or encouragement to persons engaged in armed hostility thereto, that I have not neither sought nor accepted nor attempted to exercise the functions of any office whatever under any authority or pretended authority and hostility to the United States, that I have not yielded a voluntary support to any pretended government authority, power, or constitution within the United States, hostile or inimical thereto, and I do further swear that to the best of my knowledge and ability, I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign or domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I take the obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties as a citizen of the United States. So help me God. Signed, Samuel Kramer, sworn and subscribed before me, 3rd day of December, 1862, Jacob Good, JP, Justice of the Peace. State of Maryland, Washington County, to wit, I hereby certify that Jacob Good, Esquire, before whom the above annexed affidavit was made. It goes on with additional legal language, but you get the point. This is an affidavit, this part of it, signed by Jacob Good, the Justice of the Peace. And you heard Samuel Kramer swear the oath. That last part of the oath, I think, is well familiar to any American who has walked the earth. Now, I was curious to find out more about this document. So I did what I do. I reached out to try to find an answer. I contacted the Antietam Historical Society, the Antietam National Battlefield, my friend Justin Mayhew, who's a tour guide at Antietam. And then I researched all of my go-to databases, ones that I've discussed here before, and other platforms. These efforts eventually led me to Stephen Cowie. He's the author of a book, When Hell Came to Sharpsburg, the Battle of Antietam and its Impact on the Civilians Who Called It Home. I found Steve's email, reached out, and he replied with enthusiasm and a genuine desire to help. Steve explained that what we're looking at here is known as a citizen's appraisement, which many Sharpsburg residents completed during the weeks following the battle. In effect, the claim for damages. Steve added some details. He wrote to me, quote, as you can see in the papers, citizens' appraisements were created by three witnesses other than the claimant who were required to swear to the veracity of the losses and damages before, of course, the justice of the peace. The appraiser witnesses were usually near neighbors, end quote. Steve continued, quote, while researching at the National Archives, I located 150 plus claims related to Antietam, most cases related to farm families, but many were filed by townsfolk. The inventory of Sharpsburg Main Street petitioners mirror Kramer's losses. Homes gutted of food, clothing, bedding, and other possessions. They were likely resulting from a combination of plundering and medical appropriations. Since Confederates occupied the town from September 15th to 18th, they surely carried off some of the property listed in the claims. But evidence shows that Union forces took items from many homes after occupying the village on September 19th. End quote. Now, another point about this particular document and ones like it, they were usually filed in duplicate or triplicate, Steve tells me. One of those copies would have been sent to the U.S. War Department in Washington, D.C. This particular copy likely belonged to Kramer. So now let's talk about the people who are involved. We've got a basic understanding of the document and its importance. What do we know about the individuals? So let's begin with Samuel Kramer. He's the key figure in this document. And this image comes from Ancestry.com. It purports to be him. I reached out to the person who posted this. I haven't heard back yet to better understand the provenance of this image. But at the moment, this is the closest we can come to an actual likeness of Samuel Kramer. His last name, you may have noticed on this document, is spelled or phonetically sounds like creamer, as in creamer for your coffee, Creamer. But genealogical and other records, you'll find that it is most often spelled Kramer, Cramer. He was born in June 1796 during George Washington's second term as president. Kramer was a brickmaker by profession or trade, and he was 66 years old during the battle. He and his wife, Hester, whom he had married in 1822, they raised a family together, 7 children, and they owned a 1-acre lot and a brick home. As you might expect, he was a brickmaker on the western edge of town. In Steve's book, you'll find this map, and it shows the numbered lots in Sharpsburg in September of 1862. According to Steve, the Kramer's lot was not numbered, but he notes in one of his emails to me that the lot, quote, adjoins and sits immediately west of lot 182, which is on the extreme west side of the map. You can see I've taken Steve's map and I've added a red circle to approximate the location of where the Kramers might have lived. Now, I found another map, and that's the one pictured here. This is from the Library of Congress. It was based on surveys and drawn by Lieutenant William H. Wilcox, a topographical officer and an aide de camp on the staff of Union Major General Abner Doubleday. Wilcox's map shows the city lots in context to the military situation on the key day of the battle, September 17th. Let's take a close-up look so that we can see where Kramer's lot apparently was. Though none of the lots are numbered at all on this map, the last lot on the western edge of Sharpsburg, according to this map, is sitting right in Confederate territory on the evening of September 17th, of course, that actual date of the battle. Moreover, Wilcox's map shows blue bars. You can see those long rectangular blue bars almost looking like black. They represent Confederate forces. If you look a little to the left of that red circle, you'll see a flag. That's a Confederate flag, and General Lee's name, the label, next to the flag in very close proximity to Kramer's residence. Now, I shared this map with Steve, and he remarked his words were that it looked a little peculiar, and he wasn't aware of a church in this part of the town. Still, it gives some idea of the proximity of the Kramer's house and their lot to the Confederate Army during the battle. Steve, by the way, mentions the Kramers in his book. I want to share relevant passages in which Steve captures the impact and effects of Union artillery shelling on the townspeople as Confederates occupied that part of the town. Steve writes, artillery fire pounded Sharpsburg village throughout the day. One observer saw shells, quote, dropping on the housetops, making a fearful noise as they tore up the plank, split the rafters, and sent the shingles flying into the air, end quote. Another witness remembered missiles exploding, quote, over the town or in the streets, breaking windows, knocking down chimneys, perforating houses and roofs, end quote. A Confederate private wrote that the explosive echoes in town, quote, reverberated among the houses and up the narrow street in the most terrifying manner, end quote. Despite the danger of missiles and shrapnel raining from the sky, some people fled the safety of cellars and raced toward the river. Samuel Kramer and his wife vacated their house on the western end of town, rushing south to Miller's sawmill. The couple, quote, had hardly left the house when a shell went into the building and exploded, tearing things to pieces, end quote. A North Carolina soldier, Jacob Nathaniel Raymer, watched panicked villagers flee town on September 17th. Quote, it was sad to see so many people deserting their homes, end quote. Raymer wrote, quote, the women and children still in town were running, crying, and screaming so loud that their combined voices could be heard above the roaring battle and bursting of shells around us. So that's Steve's writing. And thanks to Steve for his prodigious research and knowledge. Thanks to him, we can breathe context and new life into this historic document. In our emails, Steve pointed out that Kramer's claim did not mention any artillery damage. Steve pointed out that that contradicts the oral accounts, the one I just shared with you, of interior damage caused by a shell explosion in the home. Steve added that claims of shell damage were listed in other claims. After reading Steve's description of Kramer's experience on September 17th, I had similar thoughts, and we independently came to the same speculation. Maybe Kramer left out the artillery damage in favor of a direct reference to the Army of the Potomac, leaving federal investigators no room to blame any of the property loss on the Confederates, which, of course, could not be held accountable for damages to property in Union territory. Steve added to this line of thought, quote, did Sharpsburg's townfolk exclude Confederate-related losses from their citizens' appraisements, or did they categorize all their losses as Army of the Potomac appropriations in an attempt to recoup the full amount? End quote. Well, we don't quite know the answer to that question, and maybe we never will, but I hold out hope that someday we'll be able to get more answers. Certainly, Steve has gone an awful long way to helping us understand. All things considered, this document it's a simple accounting of lost property and one man's attempt to recover damages from the federal government after he unexpectedly found himself and his wife on the front lines of a civil war. It illustrates in a uniquely personal way the real life impact of war on one American family and the collateral damage they incurred after fate placed them directly in the path of a terrible combat, the bloodiest single day in the history of the United States. General Robert E. Lee's Army of Northern Virginia and Major General George B. McClellan's Army of the Potomac clashed in and about Sharpsburg, the culminating event of what became known as the Antietam Campaign, that invasion of the North by the Confederate Army in a bid to move the war into the enemy's territory and seek recognition from foreign powers, namely England and France, to bring in much needed money and supplies to win what they framed as a second American Revolution. And what became of Kramer? Well, I've not found any evidence that the government paid his claim. He died in 1873 at age 77. Hester, his wife, joined him 4 years later. The last order of business is for me to find a proper home for this document in fulfillment of the wishes of James and Phyllis. My hope is to find a museum that will showcase, interpret, and preserve it as the next caretaker. But for now, I get to play that role as caretaker, and I'll be looking, hopefully, been able to place this with another caretaker soon. Take care. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode of A Life on the Civil War Research Trail.